How does meditation relate to awakening? Is there an overlap? Does meditation cause awakening? Is meditation the main path to awakening? Perhaps there's no overlap at all. Which of these do you believe? Which of these are your experience? A little background into why I'm making this video. I was recently talking with a friend who was interested in why on occasion, or sometimes more than on occasion, people who have been meditating for many years aren't specifically interested in awakening. They're not interested in the topic. They're not interested in the process. They're not interested in using practices that are more directly engaging the awakening process. And yet they love to meditate. They have been meditating for many years, often decades. And this person I was talking to was curious my experience of it, and he had asked a few friends who meditate what they thought of it, and the ones who weren't interested in awakening at all, he asked some other questions as far as why weren't they interested? What was their view of awakening, or what was their barrier? And he got some interesting responses. They aligned very much with my own experience and my own instinct on the subject. But I wanted to unpack this topic for people who are themselves curious, may have friends who have been meditating for many years or even decades and are just not interested in awakening, or are just curious about the topic in general. So I've addressed this in other videos, and I even have videos specifically saying that awakening does not equal meditation, or that meditation does not equal awakening, meaning that they certainly aren't seamless with one another. There are some approaches or teachers that would say that the most direct path, or the most proper path, or the most perhaps predictable path to awakening would be through meditation. I don't agree with that. I don't think meditation is detrimental, but I certainly wouldn't say it's the most meaningful, direct, or even accessible method to wake up. I would also say that meditation can go on for many years and decades and not necessarily lead to awakening. So that's my experience of it. With that said, of course, anyone can wake up. Anyone has access to this. Anyone has access to waking up to their true nature, including lifelong meditators. So what are the barriers? Well, for the most part, the barriers for someone who has been a lifelong meditator are very much the same as the barriers for anyone else who is not that interested in awakening, or resistant to it, or misunderstands perhaps the accessibility of it. And I'll just lay these out in no particular order. Number one is just a fundamental belief that awakening isn't something that's possible in this lifetime for them. That comes in a lot of different forms. Certainly in the past, I've had that belief before awakening, when I meditated for a handful of years. It just wasn't obvious to me that this was something that was available to me, or else I would have put a lot of energy and heart into it earlier, I'm sure. It seemed like some kind of mythology, something from the ancient past, something that took inaccessible for most people means or situations to achieve, like being a monastic, meditating day in and day out for years and years and years, all day long, or living in extremely austere circumstances, living with a guru or a Zen master for many, many years. These are the kinds of things I probably would have imagined could lead to awakening. I think these are very common perceptions. I think it gets reinforced by certain spiritual contexts or circles or groups where it just appears on the surface that there's one very enlightened person and everybody else is very far from that kind of enlightenment. Whether this is actively encouraged in that group or whether it's just a side effect of group dynamics varies. But it certainly can give one a message that only certain people, only very special people, and essentially not me, have access to awakening. So I think that's probably one of the biggest barriers, or perhaps the biggest barrier. Just not knowing it's a thing, not knowing it's really a thing that's accessible to you in your life as it is right now. So of course, again and again, I point out that it is accessible to you in your life as it is right now. And I've seen so many examples, so many case studies where this is demonstrated in very ordinary life. People do wake up, and it's possible, and it's possible for you. I think the second thing that comes into play, and there's probably a lot of overlap between the first and second, is fear. I have met people who say, no, I know about that. I know there's something there. I know I've had experiences, something along those lines. I know it's possible. I know I could put more effort into it, but I'm not interested in it. I don't want to. Not right now. Or some form of, it scares me. I've heard this in a lot of different spaces from different types of people and in different forms, but it all could be summarized by essentially fear. Fear of stepping out of the life you think you know. Why? Well, maybe because it's too comfortable. Maybe because you haven't had a major disruption in life such that you can no longer hold the illusion of life as it is, the way you see it, the way you think it is, being completely predictable. Like it's always going to be that way just because you like it that way. And yeah, maybe some people haven't quite had enough of a disruption to see through that, but many people have. And that's an opportunity to face your fear or to see and investigate what that fear is actually about. What's it guarding, if anything? That's a common entry point for people. Disruption, tragedy, major unexpected circumstances in life, which will happen to most or all of us at some point. So yeah, fear. Fear is more like, yeah, I know it's possible, or I sense it's possible, but my body knows that there's something fearful here. My experience of coming into contact with something like that did trigger fear, and then my narrative around that was, don't go there. That's the scary place. Don't go into that. And that can be pretty daunting. I find that this is often dispelled just by information, just by coming in contact with a message like this that says, the fear is okay. The fear is not an indicator you're going in the wrong direction in this case. It's an indicator that you're going in the right direction often. It's not an uncommon companion through various aspects of this process. But fear is like a portal. If you move through the fear, you move through the portal. Things look very different on the other side. If you turn and run away from that portal every time the fear pops up, then a couple of things will happen. The fear will continue to pop up when you even consider coming toward that portal or getting in the vicinity of it, because it works. It works to keep you in the mind. It works to keep you in that apparent safe world of thinking and thought and avoidance and distraction and so forth. That's one thing that happens when you turn and run away. The other thing is you just kind of go back into, I don't want to say necessarily delusion, but I'll say you go back into mind identification, and you can kind of lose track of this, lose track of the fact that it's actually available to you. It's possible. And the third thing that happens often is after a time, some deeper instinct will come online again and point you back. All of a sudden, that thing that looked so fearful will just look like super interesting suddenly, or enticing. And again, this often happens after disruption in life. Something really unexpected happens and pulls the rug out from under us, and we feel terrible for a short time, and then we feel adventurous. Something's different. There's a possibility here. And then you kind of remember that. You remember that orientation or that possibility. So this I see happening. So any of these three barriers are certainly not insurmountable, and they just take a little investigation. Look into it. Look into your limiting beliefs about the possibility of awakening being available to you. We have so many examples now, so many case examples of this happening to ordinary people. It happens all the time now. So if we dig in a little bit, we can see that it's actually possible, Sometimes you have to engage this process or engage someone who can transmit this in a way that hits you intuitively for a little while. And once engaging that for a time, all of a sudden it will go from an intellectual belief that it's possible to a physical or visceral knowing that this is possible. Not happening yet necessarily, but it's possible. You can feel it. So that's what works with number one. With number two, again, it's just information, knowing it's part of the deal. You're going to hit some intense fear here and there. It's an emotion, it's an experience, it's a physical sensation, and it's kind of a marker of being alive. It's part of being alive. It's kind of awesome in a certain way. But when our interpretation of it is misleading, is fearful, is essentially wrong, it says turn and run, that can be sort of detrimental or slowing the process down to some degree. So the information is, no, it's okay. Go in that direction. Go right to the center of it. And then the third is when that intuition hits, it says, oh, I know where to go now. I've wanted to go here my whole life, or I've been kind of led this way, but for whatever reason, I've avoided it, or I was scared of it, or I just didn't know to go there. Now you know. You have permission from the universe. You have someone telling you, and more than one someone telling you, it's okay to go there. It's okay to let go into that. And this really dispels these three issues concerning this awakening process and the common barriers for people who may or may not have a strong or ongoing meditation practice. I would say the good news about meditation is if you know how to cultivate meditative states, you've calmed the body-mind, you are somewhat acclimatized to these experiences of unbound consciousness or samadhi states, then you've really laid the groundwork. It's rather helpful when you start to dig in, when you start to inquire, when you really start to apply some intention to penetrate the illusions that are brought about by the experience of a separate identity. This is where meditation kind of shines, is when it's in concert with that intention to wake up, that intention to inquire into the nature of thought, into the nature of reality, form, identity, etc. Then meditation's a great space to do this work in. So it's not anti-awakening, it's not stopping or hindering awakening, but very importantly, it's the intention of the practitioner that matters the most in my experience. It's your intention. And if your intention is just to keep meditating, kind of feeling better and living your life because you're happy in it, that's great. If your intention is to wake up, penetrate all identity barriers, penetrate all perceptual filters that turn out to be illusions, then that's great too. And the good news is you absolutely have access to this. So, good luck. If you're a lifelong meditator and you just happened along this video and you were skeptical, hopefully that helped to hear that this is accessible to you. And if you're not interested right now, that's fine too. You may be later though, but it is available, and that I can't lie about. I have to tell you the truth. It is available to you.